Hey everyone. So we're gonna start breakout in like really as soon as Calgary is like good. Uh, so Calgary, if you can just throw me like a thumbs up or some form of emoji, emoticon in the in the Slack, then we'll start up. In the meantime, I'm gonna make sure I have Slack open here. We can go zoop. Hey, we're good. Oh, we got Bill here. That's a new one. I haven't seen that one before. Um, Cool. So I love that blanket. You look so cozy. Um, so what we're gonna do today with this breakout is just explore um, scope. It's really kind of like an extension of what we did this morning. Um, I mean, I do want to check in first. How's day two treating you so far? Is that pretty good? Pretty bad? Oh, pretty good. Okay. Um, I mean that's good to hear. Are there things that you're trying out differently today that you didn't do yesterday? No. Yeah. Oh, I'm seeing some head nodding there. Yeah. Oh, no, there's no head nodding. Um, I mean, one thing that you can do this week, while you're like starting up, is play around with your own productivity like style. That's something that's always fun to try out when you start a new course like this. I'm a big fan of the Pomodoro method, right, or the Pomodoro technique. Um, you set a little timer for yourself. This website's for it, and you work like in intervals. So you'll work a bit, and then you'll rest a bit, work a bit, rest a bit. Point I'm trying to make here is, has anybody gone for a walk today? Okay, who has not gone for a walk today? Yeah, I almost want to postpone the breakout and make you go for a walk, cause it's like 3, right? Take care of yourself, right? Like really take care of yourself. Um, I'm gonna be your mom for the next little while. Uh, so yeah. Anyways, like drink some water. Like I don't know if people do that enough. What we're gonna do with this breakout is, as I said, kind of continue on from where we were before. Now I want to go ahead and make a folder for this. So we're gonna go scope, notes, and CD, scope, notes, and code, dot. Um, what we're going to be doing is kind of going through a series of small little demos. Nothing superbly exciting here. But what we're going to do is follow bit by bit the flow of execution of a program, specifically JavaScript. We're going to do this in phases. So we're going to do this in a couple phases. I just want to outline first. This is week 1, day 2, breakout on scope and reading code as a dev. So if I was to outline the particular goals, number 1 is how to read code. Not how to read JavaScript necessarily, but just how to read code, right? I'm going to try and be as generic as possible, right? And then there's some JavaScript specific things. But basically within this, we're looking at reading and evaluating code in our heads. And I mean, the main kind of thing is we don't read from top to bottom, right? We're going to be reading like a computer, right? And we're going to see exactly what that means. Number 2 over here is we're looking at a thing called the scope chain, scopes. So the scope chain, and specifically identifying different levels of scope. And some of you may be going like, what is scope? You will know very soon. You'll know this stuff like in and out real good. Okay. So I want to start a little weirdly here. I'm gonna make a JavaScript file, and together we're going to kind of like write a bunch of code, or rather, I'm gonna write a bunch of code, and I'm gonna pose questions to you, saying like, hey, like, what do we expect this particular thing to do? Right? What do we expect this particular section of code to? Oh, this is a pattern I found. What do we expect this particular kind of section of code to do when we run it? And I have a little bit of a script for myself. I I was thinking of leaving it up for you over here as I work through it, but that's starting to feel kind of tacky. Just give me 1 second to just load it up on my phone. I'm gonna go Chrome. In the meantime, talk among yourselves. No, it's gonna take like a second. We've got compass, and then we got. Whew. Oh, I should have totally done this earlier. Oh my god. Anybody got good jokes? Is that a no? All right. I'll repeat that for Calgary. Why couldn't the lifeguard save the hippie? Hmm. Oh. It was too far out, man. Okay, there you go. Okay, so it's loaded. Oh, damn it! I pressed on the wrong button here. This is totally gonna be worth it. I promise. Okay, so I'm going to write a series of little snippets of code. And our exercise here is going to be to interpret the code ourselves. I'm going to try and stump you. I'm going to try and be a little tricky and cunning here, and then I'll go, haha, like you got it wrong because you're learning. And we'll learn together. So first, let's do this one first. This is snippet 1. Okay, here's snippet 2. All right, so what does snippet 1 do? This entire thing right here is snippet 1. If I was to go node and run whatever this whole snippet is, nothing. Okay, awesome. So our expectation is going to be nothing happens. We think. Okay, you're right. I started with an easy one. So we'll do snippet 2. Snippet 2, this one is a little bit more interesting. We're going to go console.log, hey there. All right, so I run, node, whatever, and this is all my code. What do I see printed out? Hey there, okay. All right, throw a little bit of spice in here. Snippet 3, it's console.log, and then hey there, and then right after it, console.log, goodbye. I'm a beat you to this. It goes hey there, and then it says goodbye immediately afterwards. Now, snippet 4 is where things really do get a little tasty. We get a function say hello, and in here I'm going console.log hey there. And I'm going to, down here, go console.log goodbye. And then right after it, I'm going to go say hello. All right, so we had said that this one over here is going to say hey there. This one's going to say hey, and then goodbye. What does snippet number 4 run? Goodbye, and then hey there. All right, so we are defining the function first. That's our intuition here, is we're saying that there is a function, but we're not actually running it yet. Then we're running console log goodbye, so we should print goodbye. And then ultimately we run say hello. So our intuition is that it goes and it runs this thing over here. So I'm going to copy that down here. This apparently is going to be goodbye, and then hey there. Is anybody confused by this particular point? No, cool. This seems to make sense to me as well, because we'll use a function to wrap up some code, but not run it immediately, right? It's just kind of like saved somewhere. So that's snippet 4. Now, snippet 5. Snippet 5, in this one here, I'm going to throw in a variable. I'm going to throw in a variable. This variable is called best friend. So my best friend today is going to be Tyson. So congrats, Tyson, when I make him watch this video. So Tyson is my best friend. And then I go ahead and I make a function. I make a function called say name of friend. Function called say name of friend, and in here I'm going to console.log best friend. But I'm not just going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and reassign best friend to Hussein. Sneaky Hussein. Very sneaky Hussein. In the say name of friend function, he sneaks in and he takes the place of best friend. And when I run the say name of friend function, what happens? So if this was my whole snippet, var best friend, there's a function declaration, and then say name of friend, what is my expectation for an output of this function? Pardon? Hussein. Okay, so we're expecting Hussein here. Awesome. So the idea here is that, you know, since best friend is maybe being changed before it gets printed out, that's the thing that gets printed out over here. I messed myself up. This should be snippet 6 because snippet 5 is a simplified version of this. Boop. Without sneaky Hussein. So can anybody tell me, without sneaky Hussein in there, what would we expect as this snippet's output? Tyson. Alright, so Tyson, and then this one might be Hussein. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to pick another one or two. Yeah, we're gonna do this one. We're gonna do snippet 7. So in snippet 7, I still have our best friend, which starts off as Tyson. I still have that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go function say name of friend. This is another function that does the same thing, right? It goes best friend equals Hussein, console log best friend, and then down here I go console.log best friend and say name of friend, right? So I just want you to take a second to look at this. Tyson, Hussein, what's your guess over there? I do. Boop. Thanks. Say name of friend. You caught me. Yeah. I mean, no, I did that on purpose. Yes. Haha. Yeah. Yeah. So I should also be checking up on Calgary as well. Where did my? Oh, there you go. They haven't posted anything. Okay. That's. Oh, there you go. It's freezing. Mouthwash. You drinking mouthwash? That's horrible. Cool. So you had guessed Tyson Hussein. Okay. Anybody want to throw anything else into the ring? No. So the guess here might be it goes Tyson and then Hussein. And do you want to explain your intuition behind this? Like a global variable? Mm-hmm. Okay. So for Calgary, the explanation here was it says Tyson and then Hussein because this one is a global variable and then this one's a local variable. Okay, so we're going to explore this a little more. Do you have something to add to that? Mm-hmm. Perfect. Cool. All right. Calgary, whenever you can hear me, just throw in another one of your mouthwash drinking chiffs, I guess. Um, Yayers. All right, awesome. So I'm just gonna take a step back, assuming you missed some of it. Snippet 8 is var best friend equals Tyson. I've got my usual function here, say name of friend, except I'm going var best friend equals Hussein, and then I'm console logging best friend. That's inside of the function. And I have three lines over here, one that console logs best friend, one that calls that function, and then one that console logs best friend again. So I want us to take a stab at what do we expect to be printed out here for snippet 8. Absolutely. Is that bigger? Cool. So what are our expectations for what should be printed out by this now? What's that? Okay, so we're seeing here maybe Tyson, Hussein, and Tyson. And do you want to explain why you think that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so here the intuition from, and your name was? The intuition from Tristan might be that the variables are completely separate. And I mean, that is a good point. We're going to see exactly what that means for anybody who just doesn't know what those words mean. Does anybody else have any kind of guesses or just thoughts you want to throw out about this? Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So we have two guesses here. Um, Tyson, Hussein, Tyson, or Tyson, and you said Hussein, Hussein. Or you said X, like star Hussein, Hussein, because you didn't know what the first one might be, right? Okay. Cool. So we've got a little wild card in here. It'll be something, and then maybe Hussein, Hussein. And we're going to see, is it one of these two? Is it something else entirely? Who knows? I know. I teach this thing. So that'd be a really bad way to end the breakout. Like, who knows? Anyways, we'll see you tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Oh, use the name of the lecture. Oh, somebody said it might be separate scopes. Cool. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to hop. Okay, I was going to hop to the whiteboard, but I don't know exactly how visible it's going to be today because it's always kind of like depending on like light conditions. So instead, you're going to just kind of bear with me drawing things on the trackpad. And if it's really bad, yes. Number 7 is right here. There we go. Whew. So there's number 7. Um, did Calgary want an explanation of number 7 or just to see it? Oh, missed it. So with snippet 7, we had var best friend being Tyson. We have a function into which it says best friend equals Hussein, console log best friend. And then before I actually run the function, I console log what best friend is. And the guesses from Vancouver here was that we'd see Tyson and then Hussein. What I want to do with these questions is kind of like really dig through them by hand with a little bit of a discussion on something called the call stack. So if I could get somebody's help in moving the whiteboard, we're just going to see if Calgary can see it. If you can't, then we'll draw on the trackpad. Cool. I'm going to move this thing out of the way. So could I get a second person up in there? Uh, Calgary, I'm going to draw a series of shapes on the whiteboard, and I want you to, as speedily as possible, guess the shapes. This is not a permanent marker. Okay. Ooh, maybe. No, it's actually not even a good marker. Um, ooh, this one looks fresh. Okay, so we're going to try this first shape. Can you just yell out the shape for me? I'm also going to write a word here. Is that legible at all? No one said anything? Yeah, oh, I shouldn't stand in front of it as well. Okay. Well, Vancouver's there. And no. Okay. You know what? We're gonna try. I'm gonna make it as thick as possible, right? And if it gets really bad, I'm gonna take pictures and I'm gonna post them up on the Slack, right? So So I'll have to verbally kind of explain what each of these snippets were, since I have to show the whiteboard. Snippet 1 was nothing. This is a horrible marker. Snippet 1 was nothing. So there's nothing for us to run, right? Snippet 2, snippet 2 is the console log. Snippet 3, like these are all console logs, so I'm going to skip those. But the place where things became interesting was when we were working with snippet 4. And snippet 4 was a place where we had Snippet 4 was the place where we had a function. We had a function with a certain name, right? A function with a certain name, and then we were console logging something, and then we were calling the function, right? We were console logging something, and then we were calling the function. I'm not actually going to write out the code because that's annoying. I want to take a look at how a computer is going to interpret this, and I think you were the one who pointed out that the function like definition is almost kind of skipped by JavaScript when it runs through your code, right? It'll just go like, okay, there's the function, like cool, there's the function, and then it'll move on to the rest of the stuff. Now, we're going to have to work on like personifying the computer and personifying JavaScript. If I am a person doing something, going through like a list of stuff, and there's something that I need to remember for later, right? It just makes sense that I have to write that thing somewhere, right? And that's what JavaScript's going to have to do, right? When it runs into a function that might be used later, it literally, like it needs to take that and put it away in its brain somewhere, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this pen for first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get like a, what I'm going to call a stack, right? A stack. And I'm going to take any new piece of knowledge and I'm just going to like pop it into the stack there, right? Just like, whoop, I've got a function in here. Here it is. It's in my knowledge, right? And then I hop over here and there's other stuff to do and I pop that into the knowledge, right? Now, the interesting thing is when we start going into the stuff that I did for snippet 5. So in snippet 5, and again, you'll have all this code, but in snippet 5, what I did was I put a variable up in here. Right? I put a variable up before I declared the function. Right? And a variable is also something, it's also something that JavaScript needs to remember. Right? So as JavaScript runs this thing, it's going to start from the top and it says, hey, I need to remember that variable, right? So let me just make a little spot over in my memory where I remember that variable, right? Then it gets to the function and it says, hey, I need to remember that function, right? And eventually when it gets to like console log statements or whatever, right, it's going to be able to look into its memory, right? It's going to be able to look into its memory and find the things that it was looking for, right? So I just wanted to start by motivating that idea, is that we need a place where we store all of our memory, right? And the computer's memory is going to be much simpler than a person's memory, right? Computer's memory is going to be very linear for us. Like we'll have this stack of things, and whenever it needs to remember something, it'll start from the top, right? The top being the most recent thing put into memory, and it'll work its way down. Okay? So just taking a quick break from looking at what's going on over here. If I had a stack of 3 things, and the first one at the top is the letter A, and the second one is the letter B, and then the last one here on the bottom is the letter A again, and I'm going to make this a happy A, and this is like also a happy B, and this one's an angry A, very angry A. I know that's not very visible for you over there. Sorry. If I asked you, or if I asked JavaScript to get A for me, right? JavaScript is going to start from the top of this list and work its way down. So it will only get the very first A it finds, right? The happy A. If for some reason I destroyed the happy A, I got rid of it, right? If I got rid of it and I asked you to find the happy A, you would start here and work your way down until you found, the angry A. Okay. This is kind of high-level motivation for what's going on, but we're going to see this translated into the code that we looked at earlier. So where this becomes interesting is, and I'm going to write this out sort of nicely because this is going to be our kind of centerpiece example, is when I have the variable best friend, which is equal to Tyson, and then I have my function in which I change best friend to Hussein. So in here, oh, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. In here where I go best friend equals Hussein, and then console log whatever best friend is. If I was to call that function, if I was to call this function, my program, JavaScript, starting up from the top, is going to say, hey, I know that there is a best friend variable, and this one's called Tyson, right? Best friend is Tyson. I'm going to put that in my memory down here, bf equals t. Then it gets to this function, and it says, cool, I'm going to put that in my memory as well, the fact that there is this function. Then I run the function. And I'll tell you that what happens when you run the function is functionally it's kind of like it's creating a whole new world, an entire new stack, right? Or we're going to call it a scope, right? It's creating a new place where there's all sorts of possibilities for things to happen. I'm going to represent that as another kind of open-ended rectangle here. Whoop. Another one of these open-ended rectangles. So we run the function. A new stack is created. Right? A new stack is created, and we'll go through this. And it'll say bf equals h. Now, this does not say create a new variable called bf. This just says go find bf and change it to h. So what JavaScript is going to do is it's going to look into its current stack. There is no bf. So it's going to hop to the next closest stack, and it's going to go through it until it finds bf. bf already exists, so I'm going to go and take bf and change it to h. So now what happens is when I console log bf, it will console log h, Hussein. I then exit the function. And exiting the function destroys this scope, gets rid of it, no longer exists. Destroys the scope, and then we're done. If we were to then try to take a look at like console log bf over here, right? We're going to go into our current scope and find that BF is Hussein, right? Now, I kind of made this example a little bit of a mishmash of some of the snippets, because I don't want to run you through like every single one of them over and over again. But what I'm trying to make you see is that there's a physical place where these values get stored, right? Now, I had pointed out that there was a funky one with var, right? We're going to really explore that again in a second. But what happens with var is that when JavaScript is in its new scope over there for that function, the var is saying to create an entirely new variable called bf and set that one equal to h. So if this one over here was originally t, when we get to var bf equals h, we're not going to go and change the original one. We're just going to make a new one. Okay? So this kind of goes back to what Tristan had said, which is that having var in here is going to make these two things completely separate entities. They have the same name, but they're completely separate instances of a thing. Is that a question over there?
So what you're saying is if there is no var,
Mm-hmm.
if you make a change inside of function, it will state changed
Mm-hmm.
entirely.
Yeah, it will go and find where JavaScript has stored that original value, right? And it will change it entirely. And for Calgary, the question was here, so if there wasn't var, it would go and find the original one and change it.
So then if your example is there's a function, there's no var, so then the bf got changed to same.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you create another function not listed inside that function,
Mm-hmm.
and then you change it back to Tyson,
Mm-hmm.
then it will again get changed back to Tyson and just stay there.
Exactly. So the question here was, say we had a second function, neither of them using var and both of them changing bf. So one of them changing best friend to Hussein and the other one changing best friend to Tyson. Yeah, you can flip that stuff back and forth because they'll all be referring to the same thing, right? So that's exactly what I do want you to get from this, is to look at the fact that when we declare variables, they're going to live somewhere, right? And we might be putting them in a world that it will be destroyed, right? We might be putting them into a world that's doomed, or we might be putting them into a world that's permanent, right? Right now, with the examples I've shown you, there's only two kinds of worlds. There's the permanent world, which I'll call the global scope, right? And then there's the impermanent kind of fleeting world, which you might call the local scope, right? And there may be many of those. Okay. So again, I don't want you to be fully confident with what's going on over here, because what we're going to do is hop into actually seeing the code get executed, and I'm going to give you a tool that's going to let you do this stuff, except on a computer instead of on a whiteboard. Right? Calgary, I'm going to take a picture of this after lecture, and I'm going to post it on Slack. Cool. Could somebody move this for me while I set up the thing? Thank you. Whoops. Okay, sorry, that was a really good question, so I wanted to make sure to like catch it. You were saying?
So instead of making two different functions,
Mm-hmm.
if you make a function inside a function, would that create a same result?
That's an awesome question. So here, the question was, instead of having two separate functions, what if we made a function inside of a function? Would that have the same or similar result? Like, what would happen there? I was going to say, like, I want you to try that, but I actually want to do that ourselves here and check that out. So let's make a function with another function in it. Nima, remember to do this. Okay, because what we're going to do for the last 20 minutes of the breakout is use a tool known as Python Tutor. And it's known as Python Tutor because it's called Python Tutor. So Python Tutor here Just want to make sure that Calgary is not. There we go. So Python Tutor is a website with a service that lets you write code and then immediately run it and watch how it runs. And it's going to be very similar to your debugger, except it'll have some things that are specifically very good for like learning, right? So when you go to pythontutor.com, there's Python Tutor. We want to go to JavaScript Tutor. So I'm going to send you a link to this stuff in the notes. But basically what I want us to do now is genuinely just take the code that we wrote, these little snippets, right, and just kind of see what happens. So the first one's not even worth running. It's just blank. The second one, kind of worth running. It's hey there, right? And the way JavaScript Tutor is going to work is you'll write your code and you'll click Visualize Execution. It'll take a second and take you to this screen. And this screen here will show you all of the code that you wrote on the left-hand side. Down here at the bottom, there's a very useful slider that'll let you run the code forwards and backwards, right? And in the process of running your code, you'll see any print output over here. Hey there, cool, right? So I like taking the little slider and just sliding it back and forth. Right now I only have one line, so it doesn't really look like very much is happening, right? But I'm going to grab some code that's a bit bigger. Actually, you know what? Let's do a for loop instead real quick. I'm just going to go back. If I did a for var I equals 0 while I is less than 10, I plus plus, and then we did console.log I, right? The visualization of this becomes interesting because there's many steps, right? And in fact, JavaScript Tutor even shows you how many steps of execution there are. You can use the slider or you can press the forward and back buttons. So if I press forward, I'll see that slowly the little arrow on the side here is moving back and forth in the loop. And the thing that I want to draw your attention to is this thing called the frames over here, right? So I use the word stack or scope. JavaScript Tutor is going to use the word frame, and it'll show you it'll show you all of the variables, all the values that currently exist in JavaScript's brain, right? And what values they have at the moment. So when we start off the program and it says var I, there's a variable called I with no value in it, right? But as we move forward and assign it a value 0, console log it, and then in a second we're going to increase the value, we'll see that I turns into 1, right? So this is going to be interesting for us as we bring in this stuff over here. Specifically, I want to start with snippet 5. Because I mean, you're right about snippet 4. Like that's fine. Snippet 5 is where it gets neat. So I have this variable called best friend. It's equal to Tyson. Now, JavaScript Tutor is going to show you 2 arrows most of the time. There's going to be a green one and a red one. The red one's showing you the next line to be executed, and the green one shows you the one that has just run. If I've just started my program, nothing's run, so I'm not going to see a green arrow. But as I move forward, I'll see that this line has run, and this line is going to be the next one to run, telling me that best friend has the value Tyson. And interestingly, that function, say name a friend, is also in the brain, like I'd mentioned, right? That's also in the stack, right? And JavaScript Tutor even shows us what that's pointing to, right? And as I move forward, I'm going to see that when I go into function say name a friend, I actually get a separate frame. I get a separate, again, I use the word stack or scope or world. This world here is not the global scope. It's say name of friend. It's a local world. And I'm going to see in here that when it goes to try and console log best friend, it will be able to find Tyson, right? Now we'd run into some interesting things, at least as a group discussing what was going on, when we started mutating the value of best friend inside of say name of friend. So I'm gonna bring in snippet 6 over here. Visualize this execution. So we've got best friend is Tyson. Let me go forward. This thing is Tyson. We're in say name of friend. And when we run best friend equals Hussein, right, there was only one best friend in the map. And it was the global one, so we've changed that one. So now when I go to console log best friend, I get back Hussein. And if I was to try and later on even look at what best friend is, as I've said, it's been mutated to be Hussein. I know that I've said this like a couple times, right? But again, I want it to become boring. I want you to go like, yeah, okay, Nima, I see that it says best friend equals Hussein there, right? Okay. Now, I'm going to hop. Let me just modify this to look like snippet 7 as well. So if we try to console log best friend before we ever call the function, right? Again, what we can see here is best friend is Tyson. When I try to console log it, it sees Tyson. Say name of friend is going to take me into this function. Changing best friend is only going to change that one over there because there is no other one. So that turns into Hussein. So we console log Hussein. Okay. Now the final kind of piece was this snippet 8. So before we run it, I want to like reiterate over this. Our guesses were that we'd either see Tyson, Hussein, Tyson, or something Hussein, Hussein. And part of what makes this confusing is the word var in there, right? Var. So I create my best friend variable, I create my function, I console log best friend, and at this point, it should be Tyson. I know that much at least, I think. And so we got a whopping 7 steps here. We'll move forward. Best friend is Tyson. Inside say name of friend, we're going to go create a variable called best friend. And notice over here, we have 2 worlds. We have 2 variables with the same name. But they're not the same thing. They're not the same thing. So when I go ahead and say var best friend equals Hussein, that's the one that becomes Hussein. And I go forward, I console log Hussein, and then when I leave this function, when I leave it, that world gets destroyed. It gets wrapped up and just tossed out the window. JavaScript doesn't even remember it anymore. It's gone, right? Gone. And then I move forward saying console log best friend. Well, there's only one best friend here. It's Tyson. Go forward. I got myself Tyson, Hussein, and Tyson. Right? I want you to experiment with throwing stuff into these functions, right? If I was to throw a couple other variables in here, var food equals potato, and then I'm not, I guess I could console.log food, and then let me make another one in here. Animal equals duck. There's a difference between these two, the var food and animal, right? I'll be honest, off the top of my head, I can't remember what happens here, so I'm just going to run it. Visualize the execution. I've made some variables that only exist in that magic little secret world. And as I make my way through, so best friend, food, those are both undefined. And it's going to throw me an error, I guess, at this point, saying animal is not defined. depending on your like JavaScript environment, it may or may not throw an error. I'm gonna take a step back and just edit this to say var animal duck. Okay. Oh, sick! I didn't know about this. Um, JavaScript tutor shows you the error that you'd fixed last time you broke something, so that's cool. But I'm just gonna click close and hide it. So as I make my way through, I've got best friend, I've got animal, best friend and food, duck, Hussein, potato, and then when I leave that world, they all disappear, and only the original global best friend remains. Right? There you go. You had asked a really cool question about having a function within a function, so we're going to do that. We're going to go in here and have... Okay, so this one's going to say... just console log whoever the best friend is, and then I'm just going to make another function over here called say food. Food. So I've got to have a variable food avocado. And inside of say name a friend, I'm going to go say name a friend and then also say food. Right? I know this isn't exactly getting at what you talked about, which is altering like variables inside of them, but I just want to see what happens if we call a function inside of another function. So here, judging from what I know about these like secret worlds that get created when functions run, I might assume that if say name a friend runs, a new scope gets created here, and then when say food runs, a second scope gets created. Maybe. We'll visualize the execution. I start off knowing that there are best friend and food being avocado. When I hop into say name a friend, I get a new scope. And when I hop into say food, I get a whole new scope as well. Right? I get a whole new scope. And then I'm going to pop out of say food, and I'm going to pop out of say name of friend. And make my way back. Now, I would like you to experiment with this. Like, I'm going to give you this as a structure to just kind of add whatever you want into it, including editing the same like values, because that's, I think, a really interesting thing to try out. Snippet 9. This thing right here. But I want to end this, I want to end this breakout on one last kind of note, which is you might have noticed me using the words like push and pop at various points. Specifically the word pop is a lot of fun to say when I'm talking about stacks. Right? So for our purposes right now, a stack is going to be a place where values are going to get stacked on top of each other, as if you're stacking a bunch of dishes. So if I were to ask you to put a dish onto the stack, you'd put it on top. You wouldn't like weirdly sneak it into the bottom or in the middle. That's hard. You just place it right on top. And if I asked you to get a new dish from the stack, you would take it off the top. Right? So there's a similar concept in programming. Again, we'll call it a stack, and you're going to get really familiar with it over time, right? But the action of putting things putting things on the stack, you'll often call it like push, and taking stuff off the stack, you'll call it a pop. Anywho, there is a whole bunch of other stuff that kind of go in with scope, right? We've just scratched the surface. Next week and this week, you're going to be exploring this stuff as it like pertains specifically to JavaScript in kind of more nitty-gritty ways. But I wanted to take like in broad strokes kind of a look at what scope can mean for us. Python Tutor is a very useful tool. Please do make like good use of it, especially in these this first week, where you can take any of your assignments and put them in Python Tutor, right? And just run it through and see what happens, right? It's like a better debugger for your purposes. Are there any questions, from here or from Calgary, or are we all good? Yes. Mm. So the question here was, actually, do you want to reword that? Yeah. For like var specifically, you mean? Okay, so compared, so the question here is getting into like let and the ES6 stuff. Um, I just want to postpone that, or we can talk about it after the breakout together. Just because there is material on that, and I don't want to take people's time with that. It is an interesting question though. Maybe we'll pop it into Slack afterwards as well. Are there other questions though? Cool. In that case, I'll let you go. I'm gonna send out notes, and we'll talk about let, and then we'll post it. Um, cool.